Hello and welcome to Threads of Fate. I am your host, Kira Ryberg, and today we are joined by two of my dear friends, and we are going to be talking all about Regulus. If you have been listening to the podcast already, then you are very familiar with Chloe Margherita, who has been joining us for the Tech-Ins series. She is an astrologer, an artist, a creative, a mystic, an herbalist, a writer, just all of the things that we love in this life. And Hawk, so happy to have you joining us on the show today. Welcome, welcome. Hawk, if you don't know who they are, is an incredible diviner, mystic, Apollo devotee, solar priest, and also an
Oh,
astrologer as well. Hawk, Chloe, welcome to the show.
So happy to be back.
thank you so much for having me.
So this came about because we are all big Regulus stans. We all do personal work with Regulus, and we've just been talking about Regulus a lot together and felt like it would be the perfect time to kind of come together and share some of our thoughts, insights, gnosis with you all. So you can also be blessed by Regulus's influence and warmth and light in your life. And we're going to kick this off talking about just the concept of the royal stars in general, because Regulus is one of four. Chloe is our resident star girly. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the royal stars in general and kind of what Regulus's role is amongst the royals?
For sure. Yeah. So the royal stars are four stars that have been designated as having a particular relationship to eminence, success, power, anything that you would associate with someone royal. And the history of it's a little weird. I think it's kind of seen as more ancient than the designation really is. But what I think is really cool about it is it's also aligned to the four directions, the four seasons, to the four archangels. And so I think it's just something that's like archetypally splitting, a whole into four. And so each of those, the four royal stars, which are Regulus, the heart of the lion, Aldebaran, the eye of the bull, Fomalhaut, the mouth of the southern fish, and then Antares, the heart of the scorpion, each, in my opinion, highlight a different facet of right rulership. And then, as one would expect with power, come with specific responsibilities and tasks, as well as nemesis that if you engage with them, you risk losing all of the fame and fortune and good stuff that these stars tend to bring.
Yeah, absolutely. Hawk, what's your kind of pitch for Regulus when you're talking to people about this star? How do you introduce Regulus to people?
Big lion.
I mean, yes.
What more do you need to
Um,
say?
I just feel like, yeah, exactly. I feel like his reputation precedes him, which is like so perfect, Regulus.
Yeah.
Because if anybody is familiar with the archetype of the large regal lion, they get it already. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like
It's like
the
leaked out of astrology.
yeah, absolutely. Even stuff with like Lionsgate portal stuff in like the new agey sphere, like there's been ways that people have kind of attached to that the regality of the lion and the power that it has, and we even see that just in like the animal kingdom, right? Like lions are at the top of the chain, and Regulus is also at the top of the chain in many ways. And
Mhm, mhm.
um there's a lot of mythology that goes into the stars that kind of tells their stories. Chloe, do you want to walk us through some of Regulus's mythology?
Of course, of course. So Regulus is part, as I said, the Leo or the Lion constellation, which is associated with the Nemean lion, one
Hmm.
of the foes for Hercules' 12 labors, which just in general, like the 12 labors are so interesting because we see it as just this really strong guy being strong, but mythically he does it to honor Hera, the wife of his father Zeus, who did not like this child born out of wedlock, this half mortal child. So according to some myths, he made Hercules kill his wife and children, and then basically he had to complete all of these tasks to basically make it up to the gods. And so one of them was he had to defeat this lion, the Nemean lion, that was particularly strong and powerful, so much so that its skin was so and its fur was so strong that no sword could pierce it.
Yeah.
So Hercules basically had to break his back without actually, right, while keeping him whole, which I think is its own metaphor, in order to defeat this fearsome creature.
Yeah, one of the things that I found like really interesting in some of the mythologies too is that Hera kind of trained the Nemean lion to be ruthless and a
Mm,
plague to
mhm.
mankind. And I've always kind of been thinking about this with respect to Regulus as like people who have Regulus placements in their chart and maybe express that in a way that is a little bit more, if you're familiar with one of the most prominent Regulus figures, Donald Trump, if you express it a little bit more in that way, it's oftentimes people who were trained to be that way, trained to be violent, trained to be not genuine, not pure of heart. And when I was really digging into this, I found this so fascinating. Like part of Trump's early life was like his dad is a nightmare, and he kind of trained the kids. So he like, would say to them that his message was like, you need to compete, you need to win, and you need to be a killer. And so he put Donald Trump into military school where it was really brutal and they would just beat up on each other all of the time. And they like trained him to be this like evil, mean guy. And so there's this whole story with Regulus too, where it's like, I'm not trying to humanize Donald Trump in any way, shape, or form. Like this man is terrible through and through and through. But also, there's a reason he is that way. And it's because he was taught to be that way from a very young age. And I think that there's something there with Regulus where it's like, if you don't maintain that purity of heart, you run into a lot of the traps that this star can kind of present that are maybe less favorable in our lived experience and in the experience of people who are surrounding the Regulus natives or kind of under their influence in some way, shape, or form. But it's oftentimes like there's a backstory there that we don't always see or we don't always know about.
I would also just add that Donald Trump also experienced that with his later in life mentor, Roy Cohn, who basically
Mm.
also just taught him be ruthless, be a killer. You can't lose. If someone says you're losing, just lie. Right. Basically the same playbook that you see today. So just supporting him.
Wild.
Yeah. Right. Just did he have a chance? Who knows? Who cares?
Totally, totally. But there is this kind of quality of star power, I think, that we see come through with Regulus all of the time. And it shows up in people who have it prominent in their charts, and it's something where I think that we get into this concept of like right rulership, like you were saying. And, Brady has the whole thing of every royal star kind of comes with a downfall or a potential downfall. Hawk, Chloe, do you want to tell us a little bit about what that is with Regulus?
Yeah. I'll talk as anything to say. Let them cut in, or else I'll just keep yapping. Okay, I'll yap. So yeah, there's a few ways that Regulus's nemesis is seen. I think the one that resonates the most is revenge, right? Very much about not taking, not kind of, there's a really big sense with Regulus of being the bigger person, right? Or just be, conducting yourself as a ruler should, not just enjoying the trappings and the lifestyle. And so with that, as you get bigger, as you get more visible, you become a target, right? People are going to have feelings. Why you? Why not me? Do you deserve this? I can't do it and they can. And so I've experienced this a lot with clients in some ways, even just as like experiencing the evil eye or having someone want to see their undoing happen, even if there's not necessarily any bad blood. So there's kind of this need to rise above and not use your power to lash out for petty matters, right? It's always about, okay, but what is bringing it back to the divine, or bringing it back to, yeah, just your sense that I will embody this role that is so big. I will make good on it rather than using it to stay small.
Totally. I think that there's a thing about remaining pure of heart, even in the trappings of wealth and privilege and circumstance. And it's like you can kind of go one direction with
Exactly.
that, or you can be generous and you can kind of try to spread the wealth in a way that is beneficial for all and not just the one, which is kind of ironic when we think of Regulus as being so related to like this celebrity, this star power, which is so much about the one, right? And for a very, very long time, Regulus was occupying Leo, right? Just progressed into, or yeah, processed into Virgo in like 2012 or something like that.
Which,
Yeah,
like,
Hawk?
fun fact, it's now like the first time in so long, question mark, not can't remember, but like where we have one of the royal stars in each of the elemental signs.
Yeah, that's a
Very
good
true.
point.
Very
Yeah, yeah,
true.
yeah. That's great. Um, and so yeah, there's just like that thing there, right? Where it's like it was Leo, it was the star. And also when you have that privilege, when you have that star power, it's like, isn't it just going to be lonely at the top if you don't share it with other people? You know, so it's like, does it really grant you the satisfaction and the happiness if you're not remaining genuine, if you're not remaining, you know, generous? And I think that's kind of like at the heart of the story of Regulus. But we kind of want to talk about a lot of the different facets of Regulus because there are many. Hawk, which one are you most excited to talk about?
Uh, I just had another thing about the downfall, which was that I feel like the scrutiny of fame is like light increases visibility, and with like increased visibility, like flaws appear, and
Mm,
or
Totally.
maybe like more accurately, they're just like not being like nicely covered. And it's convenient, like people are less nice to people with everything when they're deciding how much grace they deserve. And we see this all the time with like celebrities and like just generalized reaction to celebrity.
that
People
is such a
like,
good point.
Yeah.
It's like once
Yeah.
you've attained a level of success, you're actually like not entitled to the same type of the generosity of spirit that other people would give you. You know, like if something bad
precisely.
happens to you, it's like, oh, well, you should just be happy that you have the
Yeah.
things that you have. You're not allowed to be sad. You know,
Like
you have money, so you can't be, yeah.
remember
Yes.
that
Ugh.
woman? Remember that woman on Twitter who posted this just like delightful post about her and her husband having a nice breakfast together every morning, and people were so shitty to her. You were just like, oh my God,
Yes.
I can't believe that you have the
It's
privilege to have a nice
so
breakfast with your
true.
husband. She's just like, are we really fucking doing this right now for real?
Yeah,
Like,
and
how
it,
dare you, you
And it
know?
turned out that she, in fact, was like working nights, or like she, like, she wasn't even in that category, but just the perception of
like any
being
good
like,
thing.
exactly, the perception of being
Yeah.
blessed in some like minor mundane way just like enraged the entire internet.
Oh my
Right.
God.
And I think when our culture is so fame obsessed, there is this idea is like, right, once you get famous, all your problems are solved. When it's
Yeah, and
like
we're also
you
Hmm.
have a
suffering
fame's
obsessed.
worth of problem, you have a, each person seeing your stuff is like another problem. When it gets to a large scale, especially like, and this feels like a Regulus thing, right? You stop becoming a person on earth, right? You
Yep.
become
Exactly.
something high up and they feel like you, oh, I can just talk about them because it's not actually going to touch them. Like,
Exactly.
yeah.
Like once you become a god, you cease to be a person.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we see it all the time online or just like with celebrities, like we're saying, like you start feeling like they're not entitled to pain. You know, they're not entitled to anything bad happening to them. And I think about this with someone like Yoko Ono, who has Sun Regulus Parans, like through and through in her chart. And she was villainized, had so much public vitriol against her, and still everyone was like, "Oh, but like you're married to a beetle. Like you should be so lucky, you know, to like be in his presence, like to be the chosen
Right.
one." Right? And it's
Monica
like
Lewinsky comes to mind as well.
literally, right? Such a good Regulus
Oh
example.
yeah.
Such a
Ugh.
good Regulus example. Especially because with Monica too, like you really see the betrayal thing happen, right? Like she's got Venus Regulus in the 11th house of friends. And her downfall was quite literally because her good friend that she confided in about her affair with Bill Clinton went forth and sent the tapes
I
in.
didn't know
And neither
that.
did I. Not a true girly.
No.
Wow.
Oh
Yeah,
God.
I wrote about this in my Regulus article, and it was just one of the things where I was like, this is the perfect astrologer good. And like, I'm so sorry for Monica because horrible. And also, yeah, like the betrayal from someone close to you, like was a confidant. The day that Linda Tripp sent in the tapes, the next day after that, she went and met with Monica in person to get more information from her while she was on a wire. And like Monica's just there thinking she's telling her friend about like the one person she can trust and confide in about this relationship that she's having with Bill Clinton, which obviously she has taken full accountability for her role in that. And still, it wasn't her fault, right? This man was
She was like
clearly, she was 22. He was abusing his power to the nth
literally the
degree.
president of the United States.
Literally the
This
president of the United
22-year-old
States,
like
Right, right.
his intern.
Like,
Yeah. And so just like fully getting that kind of betrayal by someone close to you, which I think is like at the core of this. And we kind of touched on this already, but I think sometimes that evil eye that Chloe was talking about, it does come from friends. It comes from people that are your
100%.
confidants. And I think about that even with the story of the Nemean lion, right? It's like he couldn't break the lion until he got so close. Right. And it's like in some ways, it's the people closest to you that have the most power to break you. And usually that's the one that hurts the most. And I have seen this with clients time and time again, people with Regulus placements. It's like they're best friends and they're always kind of like, why doesn't this person actually seem happy for me when I get success, when I get to that level that I've been trying to get to? It's like there's always this weird undercurrent of jealousy or, just like a negative kind of energy that they're sending out because they are jealous or they want to be there and they can't just celebrate someone's wins. And I think that's probably one of the hardest parts of this star. And it's like you don't get the good without some of the bad too. And that's true with everything, but certainly true with Regulus.
And on the flip side, going back to Donald Trump, unfortunately, and Roy Cohn, who was like, mentor all throughout the 80s, is the reason he kind of had his resurgence. Roy Cohn was gay, but closeted, but it was kind of an open secret amongst his inner circle. And he got HIV. And after that, everyone, including Trump, just iced him out, completely isolated him from the scene. And Roy Cohn was not a nice guy, right? He was pretty awful, especially to other, actual, queer people also like suffering from HIV at the time. But yeah, it just shows it's like when your only concern is yourself, right? Then you're going to lose the very people who brought you there. And what sort of success is that?
Yeah. It's like you want to be a king who serves the kingdom, who is in right relationship with the people. You don't want to be the king who's abusing the power and kind of taking it all for you. Because at the end of the day, what does that leave you? It leaves you with the kingdom of people who want to like see your head in the guillotine, which speaking of another Regulus individual, Louis, the 16th, Marie Antoinette's husband had like son Jupiter Regulus. And yeah, literally had so much success, right? Like was really hated for how much money he was spending and like all of the gold and the wealth and this kind of like obscene display of that in the face of other people who were suffering, who were hungry, who were impoverished, right? And then what did they do? They chopped his head off, So it's like that's kind of the downfall.
And rightly so.
Oh, really? Yeah,
literally 100%, it's like when we get back to that Brady thing where she says, sometimes if people don't act with that pure heart, if they take revenge, if they stoop to their enemies' levels, then all of a sudden you do have a downfall. And sometimes it's public and sometimes it's private. And in this case, we see the very, very public downfall of a Regulus figure who kind of went the other direction,
I feel like we all were kind of waiting for this to happen to Donald Trump, like astrologers. When he got arrested, we were like, oh my God, that fucking Regulus shit. Like he's fucked. And then it just like didn't happen, which I feel like is interesting, because going into his situation, I was certain that like it was only a very brief matter of time before the Regulus story appeared, that element of the Regulus story. And we kind of saw it, I guess, but with his prosecution, but the pure audacity that he runs on is taking him so much further than I ever expected. Like the Regulan element of just being like fully unaccountable to anyone.
Yeah, totally.
Is working successfully.
He's good at
off marketing. The chopping block.
Right?
Exactly. He's very good at spin.
Which is a very Regulus thing, right? It's how do you present yourself? How do you communicate yourself? Which is not the same as what you actually do. And that's like his whole career.
Yeah, but I think something too that I think about with this is like that quote from Brady is like the downfall might be private. And you see the way Melania doesn't want to even touch him in person. Like he doesn't have a happy family life behind the scenes, right? The kind of like lewd comments that he makes about his own daughter, right? Like this man doesn't go home to a happy family. And so I wonder if some of that downfall that maybe we haven't seen publicly, hopefully yet, has occurred behind closed doors. And we can kind of see glimpses of it here and there. But I don't think like Donnie is super happy deep down,
You wouldn't act like you do, right? You wouldn't be so acquisitive, literally treating, one of the most powerful jobs in the land as like your personal bank account, right? I mean, he just was basically bribed with the $400 million jet. Like, does he need it? No, but does his soul constantly ache and have no recourse in anything because it never ends. Like, yeah,
Well, he's
definitely.
also got Sun North Node, which I think we forget about a lot when we're thinking of Regulus and Donald Trump is like what's ruling that ascendant and that Mars Regulus conjunction is the Sun conjunct the North Node in Gemini, right? So there is this kind of ever hungry thing for more solar stuff, more recognition, more winning with the Mars, right? It's like there's never going to be enough because that's the North Node. It's insatiable. And Donald Trump is insatiable for power and success and prestige and visibility and all of those things. And we can see that kind of shining through some of the Regulus stuff. But I also think a big part of that goes back to that Sun North Node conjunction. And when you've got all of those kind of things combined, you can kind of see like the supreme excess of solar properties in a way that is going to blind and harm other people, right? The sun is uh generative and a benefic when you've got distance from it. And the closer you are, the more it burns you and the more malefic it becomes.
Well said.
But yeah, I really enjoyed Hawk bringing in the audacity piece of it because there is, right, there is in everything, we react to, there's a seed of something there of like, yeah, what would it look like if we were to take some of that shamelessness, especially if, I don't know, you're someone like me who has a pretty strong inner critic,
Hmm.
imagine that. Yeah, anyway.
I think
I
this is
did
such a
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
oh, this is just such a thing, I think, for me and many people around me, y'all I know, where like audacity is like it's like power and the willingness to hold power, like when done badly, we've seen so many examples of this, and I think that makes us like afraid to like actually just like take it. And it's this like shining golden scepter, and you're just like, I look like a fucking idiot holding this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
And I just want
It's
to see the people who I want to see holding the scepter doing it, and it is gonna piss people off. They're gonna be like, "You're like a fucking idiot holding the scepter," right? Like there is a guy who's gonna say that, and we just have to like cope.
Yeah.
Like the most Regulus people are like completely immune to that
right.
feedback, where it's just like,
Audacity
"You
is in
look
the eye of
fucking
the
dumb,"
beholder.
Yeah. And I
right?
mean, Regulus is supposedly of the nature of Mars, right? And Mars is audacity. And one of
Mm.
the things when I was starting like some personal Regulus work, I did shufflemancy and it was like, give me a song to like describe the nature of Regulus, right?
Love
And
it.
one of the lyrics in it is like, and if I go, I'm going shameless. I'll let my hunger take me there. And I was like, damn.
Let's fucking go.
Like there is this kind of like this shamelessness quality, and I do also think in our society men get away with that a lot more than women, right? you know like look at Trump versus Monica Lewinsky or Yoko Ono, or
Mhm.
right, like, or Drake, who has Regulus on the ascendant, right, like has gotten away with so much, and
Being a
in a
bad
way,
rapper.
yeah,
God,
and we
speaking of
just
someone
kind
who got the
of,
downfall element,
yes, yes,
R.I.P.
yes.
Drake.
Kendrick Lamar said, "It's my time to shine, and I will be the one that takes you down publicly."
He's just like plucking the scepter. Just like,
But he gives it back up to God.
Yeah,
no.
yeah,
Mhm,
nice.
mhm.
But yeah, there is that kind of quality there of like you kind of have to be willing to go after what you want and do it in a shameless way, because to be cringe is to be free, and really like
100 per 1,000%.
you know say it all the time because it's so true. I feel like hockey, you're the one who's really instilled that principle in me. It's
It
like
just has to happen.
it just has to happen. You have to, the magic of never shutting up, as you always say.
It's
Yeah,
true.
Yeah.
it's it's so big, it's so major. I just feel like that's been the hardest part, like with visibility stuff for me, is just being willing to actually be perceived, which is so funny because the pursuit is to be perceived. And
And
then you're
yet,
just like, oh God, actually, there's like consequences to this. And it's not just like, oh,
Yeah.
somebody will look at you and feel negatively about me, but it's just like now have to contend with this entire inner image that is like a house of mirrors of like understand of like the light that is being shone on me, bouncing around my like inner self-concept. And I think there's something about like I have this like phrase in my head that came to me in like a dream where it was like chthonic Regulus, like dark Regulus, and like that is
love.
the house of mirrors, like that is like doing the like shadow work necessary to like actually like purify the like bouncing light inside your self-concept to like actually be able to shine is like that's my like Regulus practice, I think, is like doing that shit.
I love that because you have to. Otherwise, like, how can you occupy the light if you've never lived in the dark, or you're not facing the
Yeah.
shadow? It's like you need
Yeah.
the both sides, right? And if you've only got the light, then you're going to become blinded by it. And then you gain this like feigned sense of self-importance. And you are important, but also so is everybody else, right? And like
Yeah.
Oh
the
yeah.
idea that it's only you, I think, is where we run into like a lot of the pitfalls of Regulus. And it's part of the visibility work, but it's also like you got to balance it with the shadow.
Yeah, and I think there's something, I mean, right, I think all of the royal stars, all of the stars have a relationship to the divine, but there's something about Regulus being, I kind of talk about Regulus as the most royal star and just like
Hell
being
yeah.
like so solar. There's kind of this like constant transcendent or like lifting upwards quality that I really noticed with Regulus, whereas I think other stars maybe want to bring you down more into earth. And so I see there's like something extremely right spiritual and something about having right a sense of power that isn't just located in the self. And right as I'm kind of working on a series of classes about the royal stars, I'm really thinking about like the life cycle of power and how like if we're constantly trying to be powerful, then we will always feel powerless, right? And I think it's what Hawk was saying before. It's like if we don't have a relationship with our shadow, we are constantly afraid of like what we have in the dark, like coming out, and we are then bound
Mm.
by that secret. Right. Instead of like, I was literally just listening to my business coach talk about like, if you just share your story, the thing that you really don't want people to know, then you're coming out ahead of all the haters. Right. Or there is no story to anyone else. You've already said it. Right. And
Yeah.
that
Damn
becomes your
real.
power.
I'm thinking about this with politicians, right? It's like when they're running for office, like they have no choice but to come out and just say the thing because they know someone's going to find it anyway. And when you are at like the highest heights of visibility, that's what happens, right? So it's either like you come forth and be honest and be genuine and be pure of heart and kind of own up to maybe some of the mistakes that you've made or things that you regret and do that from a place of sincerity, or someone's going to come up and find it and show it up anyway. And then you're going to have to deal with not having been honest, right? And that's kind of going to be part of the downfall potentially.
Damn, this
Mhm.
really has me like thinking about my own life right now.
All the Regulus
Just
people
realizing things.
just realizing things. Me and all of my
Like the
friends
work is
this
happening
year.
in real time on the podcast.
Hate when that happens. But yeah, I think also with Regulus too, like you do tend to deal with a lot of projection, right? Like when you shine so brightly, when you are so visible, people's view of who you truly are can also become distorted, and then they're going to put their perceptions of who you are onto you, and it's your job to deal with that, right? And it's now you have to deal with who people think you are, the image or the figment of you rather than the actual
Totally.
person, right?
It's
So there's
almost
so
like they're
much projection that can happen.
it's like they're agitated by the heat. Like
Yeah.
like it's like they're like
Mm,
drawn to you. I mean,
mhm.
like I'm thinking I like just was shuffling a deck and just pulled that card Fire Ants. And I'm just like imagining them being like drawn to the light and then like getting like heated up by it and like swarming because they're like don't whereas they could just be like, oh great, I'll take some of that and then like fuck off into the place where they need the light. You know what I mean? But
Totally.
they're just like, oh, I have to stay really
Yeah.
close to this. It's pissing me off.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. Hate watching,
I
right?
mean,
It's
I've
like,
done
Right.
this. That's like why I understand the dynamic. You know what I mean? It's like you just get like agitated by somebody in a way that like
yes.
literally
Right.
just like escalates you.
Well, you
Yeah.
become their shadow in a way, or you expose, you're doing the thing. It's like I've had this experience of like, you're doing the thing that I'm not allowed to do.
Exactly that. That's
Yeah.
exactly what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Is like that precise thing. I even had a friend say this to me once. I was like, oh, I don't really like that person. They were like, do you not like them, or do you just feel like they're allowed to do something? Or like literally said that to me, and I was like a little medium dumbfounded. I was just like, I don't really have anything to say to this. I'm gonna go think about it for like 6 months.
Totally. I mean, it's like you get so visible and then people just like they see that and they attach that and they want that for themselves and they don't understand why you have it and then they don't, and that can create a lot of resentment, I think, on the part of the individual that kind of it's like there's this magnetic thing happening too at the same time. And then they're feeding into the
Mm.
cycle, right? It's like your haters are your biggest fans kind of thing. And I feel like with Regulus, like that's so true. We see that with fame and celebrity all of the time. It's like people are going to have an opinion about you and people are going to be talking about you in the news. And then all of these comments on Instagram on like one post about, whoever. And then it's all these people being like, can you stop talking about this person? I'm so sick of hearing about this person. It's like you're feeding it. You're giving the engagement for the
You're
thing
doing it
that is
right
going
now.
that is going to also signal to whoever, e-news or whatever, that, oh, this thing, this works. Like it's like
Right.
rage bait in a way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, or
Yeah.
just like, or you can almost see it in real time. It's like once that starts to happen, I'm like, it's only going to be a matter of time until this bitch is eating crackers, which is a phrase I love. That's like if you just hate someone, they could just be eating crackers and you're just like, how dare you? And like that's right. And this is like audacity is in the eye of the beholder. Like if someone wants to hate you, especially when you're so visible, they're gonna get their panties in a little bunch.
This bitch is
Yeah.
eating crackers.
Right. Isn't that good?
It should just be the
Episode
title
name.
of this episode.
It's not my phrase. It's from Michael Hobbs from another podcast. So ups to him.
So good. I think it's important too to talk about the fact though that like everyone with a Regulus placement isn't necessarily going to be famous. Like there's a difference
Right.
between fame and influence. And I do feel like Regulus will give you influence in your sphere. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be elevated to the highest heights, but you're going to have people looking at you. You're going to have people watching your moves, and you're going to have a certain amount of influence over whatever Regulus is touching in your chart, right? That could be, your local government, that could be your friend group, that could be, anything, but it's not always going to manifest in the most obvious kind of power, fame, success way. But there is going to be, yeah, kind of like an edge to that person. Like they might have like a really high powered job where they have a lot of people who report to them, for example, right? And you've got a lot of influence in that respect, but it's not necessarily someone you'd point at and be like, you're famous, but it's still
Right.
there. You have that power.
Right.
Yeah. So we've talked about power, celebrity, fame, influence, right? Rulership. I kind of want to talk about the healing side of Regulus because I feel like this is something that we've all been kind of going really hard on in our personal lives and chats and things like that. And one of the ways that this shows up is just through Regulus's connection with the Archangel Raphael, right? And he was the healing archangel. And there is this kind of quality to Regulus that I think is not necessarily spoken about as much, which is hilarious because of course we get blinded by the fame, influence, power side of things that we totally forget this other side, which is again going back to that solar property of healing, right? Where I mean, Hawk, go off about Apollo for a second if you want to. But there is the healing connection. And I think about the concept of like health is wealth. Even in like the magical and talismanic traditions, like when you make a talisman for Regulus, it's meant to lift melancholy. It's supposed to like despair, depression, right? And like get it away from you. And there is kind of like this more health centric thing and more of like a mental context, but that is feels very solar in nature to me.
I agree with you.
Come on, Hawk,
I
lay down
think
some
that,
of the sun god wisdom for us.
well, I think that I have like so much to say about this, and it's a little bit like hard to get through. I think there's something where like wellness, I think there's some kind of like radical self-acceptance thing that happens with Regulus too, where it's like even if like, that we're healing, it doesn't have to even necessarily be immediate direct access to healing so much as it's like you're just like, I'm actually like whole and unbroken, like despite circumstance.
Mm.
That really comes through for me when I do like sun work. And then I think for you and I, Kira, I think there's like a debilitated sun thing
For
happening,
sure.
where Regulus is like known to be a useful option for people who have solar struggles without going directly to the sun, because it can
Hmm.
sometimes be disadvantageous. I'm not telling you guys, I'm telling the general audience, but it can sometimes be disadvantageous to work directly with a debilitated planet, and that's not a hard and fast rule. So please don't not do it if you want to.
Hmm.
But it can sometimes not be like the most easeful route to like sorting something out that you're struggling with. And so Regulus is a nice like other option where you're kind of just bypassing the planetary realm altogether and going to somebody who shares a lot of those properties and natures without having to directly um, interface with the afflicted, quote unquote, planet.
Yeah, totally. Just a shout out to Christopher Warnock, 'cause I think he was the first one who kind of maybe mentioned that connection to Regulus as like a backdoor to solar remediation or kind of tapping into some of those healing solar qualities that Regulus provides that, maybe the sun would be a little bit too rough if you've got like your sun in Aquarius or Libra or otherwise badly afflicted or something like that. So it is definitely, just want to give credit where credit's due there.
Hell yeah. I got that from Amaya O'Rourke, I think, originally, but I'm
Oh,
sure
cool.
that
I
I
heard it from
love.
Caitlin Kopic.
Yeah, I also heard it from her at one point.
I'm like, I think it's in Warnock's Fixed Star book is where I saw it
Right.
first. So if I'm sure, I don't know who it's in the ether in any case.
Exactly.
But
We're just like, we'll just put the flashlight on multiple people.
like here are all the people that have said this
Exactly.
before. We're doing the
Yeah,
Regulus thing right. We could go shine the light on everybody else.
there is something unhinged though that happens when you work with like an Apollo and Asclepius, where like you're just like the things that you. Oh man, is it self-worth in part? 'Cause like there's like a thing whereby you just like set about healing with a deity, and then you're just like suddenly like, oh, I'm gonna quit smoking cigarettes now. Like
100%.
obviously, like it's not necessarily like just disclaimer on this, like most health issues are not choices. And most health issues do not have to do with your fucking self-respect whatsoever.
Hashtag lot of fortune.
Yeah. But there are places where you're just like, oh, I suddenly have the like will, which is a classic sun word and classic lion Regulus word. I suddenly
Yeah.
have the will to do this thing that was just plaguing me. Like, and I couldn't manage it before. I got on
Yeah.
ADHD meds for the first time in like in my adult life, really, like when I started heavily working with Asclepius. And that's another shout out to Caitlin Kopic. I got a talisman through Sphere and Sundry, and that was the
Amazing.
real kickoff to that. Um, yeah, and I quit smoking literally immediately. Like literally the day after that arrived, I was just like, we're done here. And I stopped drinking, I think, for many months after I started working with Regulus. Like I made a tincture myself, which was like under the auspices of like Kate and like some other stuff was happening with it, but there's also like Jupiter and Sagittarius was involved, but it was foremostly a Regulus tincture and
Yeah.
for Mullen for the lungs. And I think that was when I first quit smoking and then like unsuccessfully, obviously, but I did quit for quite a while and I quit drinking for a long time. So I think that self-worth element where you're just like, oh shit, like I'm actually important. Like
Like I
I'm
should
very
take care
bright.
of myself.
Yeah,
Yeah, like I'm very
totally.
meaningful. Like I should do this.
Yeah, it's like I've been thinking a lot, just right. I've mentioned this like life cycle of power. I really feel like right, the royal stars at its core, they're not just gonna like throw these, good things on you. It's about like, okay, but can you harness your power, which at its core is your ability to do something, right? The
Totally.
willpower. And particularly with Regulus, I see them as attuned to right the kind of individual external, right? So changing things and outside of you. And right, you kind of need like a strong body to, right, as Kira and Hawk is saying, to like be effective. And with that, it's like, do you think you are big enough, worth it to actually imagine you can change for the better and be bigger, which can be a really hard thing to internalize, that you deserve to be big or you deserve to, you're worth it, right?
Totally. Yeah. And that worth can come through in like both physical and more, like emotional context. Like I feel like for me working with Regulus was like, oh, maybe everything that I ever have written isn't the worst thing anyone has ever written before. Yeah.
I love it.
Despite like many people
Yes,
enjoying my
self-esteem.
writing, it's like people tell me all the time, like, your writing's great, and it just
Right.
bounces. Like before I worked with writing, it just bounces off me. I'm like, surely this person's lying. They're just trying to be nice. Like, no, they're
Right.
not. They don't know me. Like they would just write a bad review if they didn't like it. But I'm just
Right.
like, no, that's not real. They don't mean that. And then I started working with Regulus and I was like, oh, I guess like these hundreds of people who like buy my stuff and like my work, like actually aren't all in a conspiracy theory together to to like tell me false praise, right? Like maybe they actually just do like what I do. And it
Well, it's
kind of
like
like,
you trust their authenticity suddenly.
yeah, yes,
Yeah.
yeah. That's a
And like,
great point.
And like how much more work it would be for hundreds of people to be like, okay, you now deploy your fake here,
Literally.
and then the next week these dozen will, right?
Like
It's like
it's so unrealistic and yet like debilitated sun culture. I'm just like, no, surely
Wait, Chloe,
nobody means
Chloe, is it
this.
your week or my week to falsely praise Kira?
we woke up
Everybody's just
at 6 a.m.,
aligning.
so I guess I'll take it today.
Oh my God, thank you.
The co-conspirators. But yeah, I think like for me, Regulus has also just made me realize like, oh, like that self-worth quality, it's like it's really a big thing. And I think part of it comes from like casting off self-doubt too, or like, this lack of belief in yourself and what you're capable of and your own importance, right? And there's still the other side of that that's like you got to remain humble. You don't want to become hubristic, but there's a fine line to walk of like, and I think especially women are kind of hated on a lot when you get too confident. And so we're always taught to keep small and not say as much or, not step into our power. And I think Regulus is really supportive of that, but also you can then get some of the vitriol that comes with kind of owning your shit, right? And being like, no, I am important or I do good work or
100%.
whatever it is, right? Because then other people are going to see that and be like, who do you think you are? And Regulus is like, you're you. And that's
Yeah.
enough, you know?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think about accommodation too for like disability and stuff when it comes to Regulus, where it's just like I'm actually important and there's like nothing like wrong with me and like I can ask
Mhm.
you to accommodate my situation without being like I think I have plenty of I feel like I spend time with like one of my people who I am constantly encouraging to take accommodation. I had to be encouraged to take accommodation. Like a person really had to like hold my hand through like taking basic accommodations at the beginning of my like process on that. And people are resistant to it because they don't like how it makes them feel about themselves sometimes, where
Mm-hmm.
you're like, oh, I'm like a burden, like I'm too difficult. And obviously that's reinforced constantly. But yeah, just that whole message of like there's nothing wrong with you, even when there is something like that you're dealing with hardship wise, like you're still like your like spirit is like as it should be and aligned correctly.
That's
Um,
such a good point.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
that aspect of strength, even if you don't have like physical strength in certain specific ways, it's just like or like mental fortitude in specific ways. Like it's just like there's an element of just that like golden infusion of being like in alignment with like your true self that like is to me like that's like the thread that connects like materiality to like spiritual like health, as it
I
were.
love that. Yeah, totally. It's making me think a lot about like how Regulus is almost like the antithesis of Saturn in some ways, right?
Hell
Like
yeah.
this burden thing, this hardship thing that we're talking about, that feeling of like, oh, I don't want to kind of make it harder on anybody else, so I'll just bear the entire brunt of the burden. Like that's the most, cat moon thing probably ever. And and also if you're thinking about debilitated sun culture, it's like where does the sun debilitated? In Aquarius, Saturn's domicile, and in Libra, Saturn's exaltation. So it's like the back door to curing some of these Saturnian ailments of feeling like a burden is just coming into yourself, stepping into your power and being like, I matter anyway. And Regulus can
Yeah.
help on the, acceptance in that path and that journey.
Well, and it
Right. And I
distends. Oh yeah, you go, Chloe.
Okay, great. I think like I'm just thinking like a key of this too is like as much as it's about the exaltation of the self, I think it's also important to see power and visibility as impersonal. Like it doesn't mean you're a good person. No one inherently
Totally.
deserves it more than ever. Like all of
100%.
us, right, are unique emanations of the divine. Like actually all of us deserve it and don't. Right. So like that's
100%.
another thing I've been thinking about too is like being too into like, oh, I can't do this, right? Me particularly cannot. And there's plenty, like as Hawk said, there's plenty of hardships and real things. But if you're just kind of in your own way, it becomes a way of like kind of backdoor worshiping the self of like, I'm so uniquely messed up that I
Yes.
truly cannot do what anyone else does. And it's just another way of being like, I'm different. As you were saying, Hawk.
It's like literally so true. And I was just what I was about to say that we kind of like talked at the same time was like very similar. It was literally just like when you insist on like holding it all for like yourself, you're actually like distending the social fabric. You know what I mean? I'm imagining someone with just like holding a ball of lead when someone's like, I could like take some of that, and you're like, no, 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 no. Like,
Oh, I
and instead
can.
it just like is like the entire like what would otherwise be a fabric like that's like nicely spread out in a net is just like whoa, like in the point that is you.
100%.
Because it's like a
Good image.
relational system where we all like need to be selves to function.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
I mean,
thinking
like
about how
you're
difficult it is to like make a decision with somebody who's like, oh no, it's okay, whatever you want. You know what I mean? And you're like trying to like make a choice, like the
Yeah.
refusal to be the self and to just be like, yeah, no, me for a second, while other people are also doing it, actually just like complicates matters. It creates like a blank spot where there need to be multiple lights.
Yeah, I'm thinking about
Right.
like when you have a group of friends and everyone's like, I don't care, I don't care. And then you just don't end up going anywhere. You just end up sitting in the same room doing the same thing because no one can make a decision. No one has like the selfhood to just be like, this is what I want to do. And then everyone would also probably be like, sure, let's go there, but it
Power
takes
is a
someone.
it's a
Yeah,
job. It's a job that needs to get done.
Literally.
that's a good,
It is.
great, great point.
It is.
It's so true.
Do you guys want to talk about some of our personal gnosis with Regulus?
Yes.
Yes. I mean, one of the things that's come through so much for me is like this idea that Regulus is actually feminine. And we tend to think of Regulus as like this masculine kind of energy, like the king, right? But lions are, for the most part, like matriarchal, and this lion that is in the sky that we look up to every night, right? It's like, why do we feel so inclined to just immediately go male with that? And it's like, well, who is the dominant force in our society that has the power and the visibility and the success? Men, right? But who kind of secretly holds the power behind the scenes? Oftentimes women or, people who are maybe not necessarily conforming to the construct of power and in society that we tend to ascribe to it, right? And so, yeah, one of those things that's just come through for me is like maybe Regulus is feminine actually, and that worshiping that face of Regulus or being, in relationship with that face of Regulus can also reveal another side of Regulus's inherent nature that is not wholly masculine or accepted by the dominant society.
Hell yeah. I had a really strong piece of gnosis about this, like pretty much identically to when you started she, herring her. Um, I like, but it didn't feel connected at first. I've been on an Artemis kick, like bigly, and
We love.
and yeah, I've just been thinking about her so much as like the huntress and classic hunting lions. I would have never associated with her with lions, except I was in Yosemite and I found this field of California mugwort where I was just like, is it okay to like make a thing with you? Because like it was so much of it. I've never seen so much of like a single plant in the same place that I could identify. And I was just like, okay, I'm not being a very good listener right now because I was on family vacation. Like it was a lot. And I was just like, so just send me a dream. I won't be able to talk over you there. And so I go to sleep and I have this dream where the most insanely beautiful statue of Artemis that I've ever seen in my life is made out of beeswax, this like deep, golden, profoundly beautiful beeswax statue with like incredible levels of detail. And she's like flanked, like under her feet are like two lions holding scimitars. And like that's just like how
Mm.
she's configured in the statue. And I was like, oh my God, this is fucking beautiful. And then, like, long story short, like the statue melted when exposed to sunlight and heat. And I was just like, oh, okay, so this is like not a shelf stable substance, like which like told me something like about, because mugwort is an artemisia, so I was just like, holy shit, this is like clearly an Artemis grove. Like I'm obsessed with it. And then I had the dream, which I feel confirmed that, and I was just like, oh man, not a shelf stable substance. So anyway, we problem solved with that in collaboration with the spirits. But the main thing was this like Artemis vision where I was just like, holy shit, like lions, like would have never thought with the lions. I looked it up right before we got on this call because I was like, I wonder now that I'm going to talk to an audience about this, is there like a shred of truth to this? And I found immediately, I just Googled like Artemis lions and I found an image of her like a winged Artemis with twin whips flanked by lions from 550 BC.
Whips.
Amazing.
Hell yeah.
So I was, and anyway, like long story short, when I went to make I did take some of the materia and I found a way to like that I think in collaboration with these spirits that I could deal with this. And the day that I made it, was the Regulus moon. Uh,
Oh.
and I made it was like the perfect mirrored replacement to the previous Regulus tincture I made in 2019, which was just starting to run out of. And when I left, I happened to leave it on my main working altar, like the very little left I had in this big ass ball jar. And I just like went on this trip, and exact identical circumstances. Like there was a climber's graveyard, which was an ingredient from the previous tincture, like climber's graveyard dirt, which
Wow.
which I will. And then this plant, which is associated with this torch-bearing deity, right? Because like mullein was the previous plant that I used, and that's obviously like witch's torch.
Do you know
Mhm.
what
And in this
Regulus's
case,
herb is?
is it mullein? Yeah.
It's mugwort.
It's mugwort.
Is it really?
Yeah.
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 Well, I'm obsessed with telling you guys this on this podcast without knowing that. That's so fucking
Well, how do you
funny.
think
Wow.
they first came up with herbal correspondences, right?
I just straight up didn't know that. Like,
Well, they probably did that. They probably, saw a plant, had a dream about it, right? Looked at the stars and said, right, that's Regulus.
Totally.
damn. Well, so there's the fucking Artemis connection straight up because it's just
It's just like
Artemisia.
so many connections. That's
Yeah.
like pretty
I-
robust gnosis.
I do want to mention why I picked the graveyard dirt because I think that's kind of a cool like element. Because like my whole idea with the Regulus materia is it's about bravery. Like that's the key word and the key face of Regulus, and I'm like, I need you for this. Please help me. In this case, I want bravery for like being in relationship because I think Artemis is a cool example of like the like ever maiden, but like she takes consorts, And I'm like, how do you be like yourself, like profoundly like unchained, like laden down, but like still like with other people? Like, please teach me the bravery that like I need for this. And like she made me talk about this on this podcast. So I'm like, I'm not usually used to like going off about like the stuff that I'm in the middle of, like
Thanks,
on the
Artemis.
radio. But yeah, the climber's graveyard dirt and the graveyard dirt in general it's like I feel like dead people are like incredibly good. They actually know where the line is. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like
Totally.
here's where like there's like only one real fucking true irreversible danger. You know what I mean? And it's
Yeah.
death. And I feel like therefore like like any type of like person who's like been an adventurer or whatever, somebody who's like been very brave in life, they actually know like where the edge is. And like up until that point, they're kind of like, that's not it. That's not the edge.
Yeah.
You keep going.
Yeah, totally.
And obviously Artemis is like a brave warrior and like she's
A
really
badass. I
Okay.
love that we just fully brought that full circle with the mugwort.
Yeah, damn. I'm
It's
really
was
glad
so
I
good.
decided to talk about this.
And then
And
Chloe, you had an experience too, right? With like a new
I
an
don't,
herb or
yeah, yeah. I feel like, especially pretty recently, I've had a relationship with Regulus for a while, particularly because I've been, studying them for my Bohemian fixed star book coming out 2026, which has involved a lot of
queen.
gnosis and a lot of visions, which I can get into. But I feel like recently Regulus has really been courting me. Particularly, I took a road trip to Phoenix I live in Portland, Oregon. So I just feel like being in the desert in general is just like very much Regulus's vibe. Like Kira said, making a Regulus talisman is supposed to dispel melancholy, but also supposed to help with too much choler, which is like basically like the hot, dry humor. So yeah, I make flower essences. So I'm basically everywhere I go, I'm like, flowers, flowers, flowers. Who wants to work with me? What's reaching out? And what's really cool is in certain parts of the desert in Southern California and Arizona, there's this one desert plant called ocotillo, which typical Regulus fashion, my other herbalist friends have been like hyping them up for months. Like when I was first going to the desert in New Mexico last year, my herbalist friend was like, "Are you going to see ocotillo?" And I was like, "Who?" And they're like, "This plant." And they just weren't in that part of the desert. And so just if you drive through like Southern California to Joshua Tree, you see just this like 20-foot tall, like spindly plant in the spring. It's
Mhm.
covered in leaves and has like these, beautiful red flowers at the top. And it's like, it's so gorgeous. Like it feels like that sort of like Regulus, like when you see like, a true like anatomical angel, you're just like, it's like sublime. Like you feel really moved by it. And so
Mm.
I happened to go into Joshua Tree. I found this one plant in particular that a crow was nearby. So it just like, okay, this is the plant. And I divined it, it very much wanted to work with me. And I yeah, I mean the ritual itself was wonderful. Like it was so quiet. There was barely anyone there, but just like gorgeous views for miles, like kind of what Hawk was saying, just like extreme clarity. And at one point I'm like making an offering and touching the plant and it pricks my finger. And so I was like, oh dang, did I do something wrong? And then I was like, maybe it wants a blood offering. So so I put some, I just, dabbed it on the leaf. And then when I was done with the ritual, I looked at the chart of the moment, which I'm always do. And I was like, oh, Regulus is on the ascendant. And then
As
like,
one
as I
would.
just, right. Yeah, of course. Right. I want to see what stars are around. And as I was driving back, this Elliott Smith song called Roman Candle came on. And I was just like,
Oh
oh,
yeah.
Akotio looks like a Roman candle. Right. And I was like, and then over time, it was just like, oh, of course, Akotio, which is like, flower essence form, which I love taking, is very much associated with like, right, this like maternal fire energy. It's very good with boundaries, but also creativity and like the exaltation of the self. And so just everything about it was like, oh, this is so Regulus. And it just felt like Regulus was present for like the whole trip. Like I just felt like, I was going to a wedding where I didn't know any people, but I felt so comfortable, like just being myself. And that was the thing. It was like, I'm just going to go to this thing. If no one talks to me, great. Like I'm just going to have a good time. And if I hate it, I'm going to leave. But I think there's something like, I also was wearing an amazing fit, which
Yes,
Hawk
you
and Garrett
were.
can attest
It
to.
was
It was
so
really
good.
fitted up.
So
Right. I
good.
rose to the occasion. And at part, I was like, I got kind of scared at first. I'm like, is this going to make me stand out too much? But
Too
literally, like the
much.
second I walked,
Classic
right.
Regulus
But
question.
I was like, no, and I just was like, no, I just have to show up as myself. And if some people think that's too much, then I'll just go back to my hotel room and watch Pride and Prejudice again. But literally, like, I was
As one
walking
does.
down the steps to the hotel to go to the reception, and three strangers at the wedding were like, "Oh my God, you look incredible." And that was literally like my whole night. Like I was content to sit by the pool, at the pool by myself, dance, but it's like every 5 minutes there'd be someone else being like, I saw you from across the room. You look amazing. Like, who are you? Where did you get that? And it would just felt like, right, like visibility is not just something that right separates you. It's something that's warm and can invite people in. And I really felt like because I felt so comfortable and like I didn't really care, if I didn't need other people around me, like I think it allowed other people to feel comfortable because I didn't like need anything from them. I just wanted to be present and connect.
That
Yeah, it's
really
like,
says something about night Regulus, I think, where you're like, that's where you want the campfire, is like,
Mm,
I love
in-
that. Yeah, it's the
so
warmth
true.
of the sun that invites people in, right? We revolve around the sun. And I feel like when you are in your power, when you are comfortable, when you are saying, I'm going to do the thing and I don't care if I'm too much, like people are magnetized towards that. They're attracted towards that. It brings them into your sphere and helps them kind of rotate around you in a way that is beneficial for both parties, you know?
hell yeah.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Right. But it's like weirdly something you can't calculate, right? It has to
No,
be that
yeah.
present authenticity of like, I'm just going to do it because like feels like hell if I don't. And then maybe
Yes.
people will get it. But that's another thing. Like maybe, right, that's not your kingdom, right? And you have
Yeah.
to be able to separate the audience from like that sense of authenticity.
Yeah, it's like Regulus is about having the audacity to be your most authentic self, whatever that
True.
means. And then people
Yeah.
are going to be drawn to that because you are being you and no one else can be you. It's not replicatable, right? So inherently, it's something special and unique and divine. It's like your essence is attractive. And the more that you believe that, the more other people believe that too, you know?
Hell yeah.
Yeah. You
I
create
think
your
that
reality.
listening
Mm.
to you say that, Chloe, made me realize that like a major part of doing the ritual to Artemis on the Regulus moon was the fact that I was doing it with my partner, which is
Mm.
like I don't usually, I haven't done a lot of magic with other people since like probably like 2015, and I find it really hard to like stay in my body like while that's happening because it's so easy to dissociate like and just be like, oh, I'm gonna like kind of pretend this isn't happening. Like, do you know what I mean?
Totally.
Or like to you like leave the stage even though like you're still there, you're still doing the thing, but staying like with it and present with it and just being like, oh, like we'll just kind of do this together. Like, oh, do you want to see this like hymn to Regulus that I wrote like a few years ago? Like we can do that. It's
I
fine.
love
Like,
that.
you know. Yeah, which
Yeah.
was in and of itself like an initiation to the thing I requested, which is just like a really
Right.
beautiful thing that I feel like happens again and again with this work in general, beyond Regulus, but also especially with Regulus. I feel like where he's just like, "Oh, you want that? Okay, here it is immediately." Like,
Yeah, I've definitely had some experiences like that too with Regulus. Like
tell
I
me.
or I'm like
Yes.
I can't blow there's some of the stuff that I just can't talk about. But what I will
Sad.
say is I ordered Spear and Sundry Regulus salve and then the very next day. And by the
I have a
way,
story
I
about this
just
too.
realized this last night. Like I did not make these connections at the time and this was in 2023. The day after I ordered the Regulus salve, hadn't even had it like shipped to me yet. I probably had one of the biggest like audacity moments of my life where I was like, I'm just going to have the audacity to ask this person this thing, to take this opportunity and see what happens. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But this is going to be it will be a big thing for me in my career if I take this risk. Right.
Mhm.
And then did that. And then the way that it panned out was just like, every time that there was a development in this story, Regulus was present in either my transits or in the chart of the moment or something like this. It was like this overwhelming thing. And it was immediate. It was like this decision that I made to like invite Regulus into my sphere a little bit more wholly, to try to step into my power, to be a little bit more comfortable with expressing myself. Because as an Aquarius sun on the midheaven, it is like deeply, deeply uncomfortable for me to be seen and visible. The fact that I'm even doing this podcast is a testament to Regulus. Like 1,000%,
Yay.
and it was like this journey of like once you invite it in, Regulus shows up and is like, here you go, like you want the opportunity to be you want the opportunity to step in your power, I will provide that for you in some way, shape, or form. And it was, yeah, it was instantaneous, and it did end up, like I would say, changing my life, that one thing that I did in a major way. And so don't doubt the power of Regulus to do and provide those opportunities, but you also have to answer the call. Like you also have to then
You really
be
do.
brave, like have the audacity, like go do the thing, right? Like no one else is going to push you to do the thing besides you. And that's part of developing that self-trust and kind of casting out the self-doubt. And I think Regulus helps with that a lot.
Hell
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's where I think it's like having some sort of, right, I really feel, especially with the fixed stars, that having some sort of direct relationship or ritual is really important. And I think it can really help, like especially with the Regulus tasks of like stepping into your power and visibility, because then you can see it's not just you, right, being selfish, right, internally. You're in relationship with something divine that it says, no, like I want you to do this thing, right? And you can like any sort of doubts or fears or whatever, right, you can kind of give up to Regulus. And I think they'll help you work that out, right? And it's really, and as we keep kind of alluding, it's a thing to do if you feel like, Regulus is near you, feel like something like potent is happening, is look at the chart of the moment and like
Yeah.
look to see like, so Regulus is at like right 0 degrees Virgo. So if like particularly if like the ascendant or like the midheaven is at that's pretty potent, but any of the angles really.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Such a good point. The stars are ready for you if you're ready for them,
Mm-hmm.
and they're just waiting. And I feel like Regulus is one who's very welcoming, to invite you into their sphere, her sphere. Um, this has been great. Do you guys have anything else that you want to talk about before we finish up?
I just have a silly story, much like your one about the sphere and sundry
Tell it.
Regulus thing. Um, I talked about this in my lecture on finding gods in the birth chart. Good God, which
Go
I
check
did
it out
ask
on
my
Hawk's website,
Book
now available for
it.
purchase.
yeah. Yeah, that's true. Um, I ordered some of this and some of Sphere and Sundry's Regulus salve, which is amazing stuff, to be honest.
It is.
I attribute like a lot of my online visibility ability to like get into that zone, to like working with that materia and Regulus before and after that. And so I order it, and I live in an apartment building with one of those mailboxes that is like multiple mailboxes. The package gets stuck in the package box. I had never like been exposed to this system before at all. It's trapped. They give me a little key in my mailbox. It makes no sense. I'm like completely unfamiliar. I'm absolutely not the expert with regard to this system. I feel like a fucking idiot, straight up. I'm just like, I can't figure this out. I try and do it, the little lock. If I fuck it up, it like anyway, I'm like the only way I can think of to communicate with the United States Postal Service about this in a way that makes any sense and doesn't seem incredibly annoying is to just write a note. And the only place to put this note is taped to the outside of my fucking post box because it was like, if it was inside my mailbox, no mailman is gonna like be like, oh, like this is for me. So I had to like literally put up a note, which is like basically like, hi, like I can't figure this out. Like I feel like a dumbass. Like this is my unit number. Can you please help me get my box out? It was like literally like, and I was like it so like temporarily ashamed of not being able to work this out and being like looking like I don't have intellectual information about things is definitely something that at that point was gonna bother me as like a generalized complex that I had in my psyche. And just publicly in front of my entire building, just being like, I don't fucking know how a mailbox works. Like, I just love the fact that it was literally locked behind a door until I was willing to do that, to just
Yeah.
be publicly seen as like not being competent in a way that I value I should more so say that I really value my knowledge and I value my intellectual competency more than I'm like ashamed to not have it.
Nice
And it was
spin.
just
I
like
love it.
it's like you have to be willing to be perceived not having access to this thing that you see as integral to your worth, right? In
Yeah.
order to like get to me. Like step one, do you want me? Like and I was just like, yes, I
Right.
fucking do.
It's like
Yeah.
it's an initiation into, yeah, knowing that like when you are more visible or when you are going to step into that, like you are still a human being who's going to make mistakes or who isn't going to have all of the answers. And that's part of it. And when you're public, you're doing that in front of other people. So oftentimes it's going to feel like a failure, but it's not a failure. It's just being human and visible. Right. And so it's like to get to Regulus, you also have to be willing to look stupid sometimes. I think, Hoppy, you
You
were
really
saying that to
fucking do.
me last night. Like and we were talking about this whole thing about, I was like, oh, I should really get like some headshots done, but I just hate posing. Like it's so uncomfortable. You're like, Regulus's whole thing is like not being afraid to look stupid sometimes for the sake of visibility, because that's how
Yeah,
you get there. It's part of the
Jim Carrey.
process.
Jim Carrey has the midheaven on Regulus, and I like think he's just like the perfect example. I don't know which one of you wrote that down in the sheet. I did not know that before
Kira.
today, but like
Me.
good job.
Thanks.
But like that's such a perfect example of this because he's just like, his whole bit is just being a complete fool. Like, and he's not afraid to do it at all. And he's made like a beautiful career out of that. And I just feel like, yeah, anyway, I just feel like you're, yeah, you know.
Yeah. A willingness to quote unquote fail publicly is part of being visible, is part of being
Right.
in the light. You're not going to get away
Yeah.
from that.
And you can't
And
have the ego that like demands the perfection. Like that's the downfall element is it's like if your ego demands perfection, you don't get to be seen like being your true self. You only get to be
right.
seen being like a shiny, pretty, curated image of you. You don't really get to be like me, myself, like real legit, like doing the Artemis ritual by the riverbank with my partner. Like, oh God, this is so fucking weird. Ah, like.
Yeah, it strips you of your personhood when you expect perfection of yourself all of
Yes.
the time. And if you're going to be doing any type of work visibly, then you kind of also have to be ready and willing to say that you're not perfect and to own that. And yeah, I feel like that's a big Regulus lesson for
It's
sure.
such a nightmare.
It is. It's
Right.
horrible, horrific for me personally, honestly.
Same.
But we're doing it,
That's
and
why
that's
we're all
part of
doing it.
it.
It's because we're all like, oh God. Or at
Well,
least
I think
I
that's
am.
part of it too, is just like, I don't know if anyone just wakes up one day and says, I am Regulus and I am right, the ruler. I think it's like it's a process, right? It is only through the right thing, like things that felt cringe to me a year ago, like don't feel cringe to me now, right? I think it's like, can you like you are forged in the fire, you're honed as you take up the path and do the tasks that Regulus wants you to do. Right. And I think with that perspective, right, we can see, right, yeah, power not as this static state that you hold on to, but yeah, something that you're in relationship with.
I love that. That was great, Chloe. Well,
Regulus, baby.
Regulus, baby. I think that's a great place to end it. Thank you guys so much for coming on and talking about Regulus. I hope we did her justice. If you guys want more fixed star stuff, go and check out Chloe's work. She has so many courses and the forthcoming book, as previously mentioned. And then go check out Hawks, Gods, and Guides Talk, which is available on their website now. And yeah, that's what we've got for you. Thanks for tuning in to Threads of Fate, and we will catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye, go be
Bye.
yourself.